Hello my beautiful puddings, welcome to another Kittie's Classroom. This is your needle felting tutorial for your pudding dolls. In this video I'm going to show you how to needle felt sheet felt to sheet felt using a felting needle and a felting block. I will also show you how to felt details on your pudding doll's face like these two here, how to blend in your paws and your tummy, and a couple other different techniques as well. You can get the pattern for your pudding doll in the link below. You can also get a kit on my website. I'll leave a link to the full 4-part tutorial to make your whole pudding doll as well. You'll need to watch this video before you move on to the full tutorial if you're wanting to do any felting details on your body. If you need any help or assistance, please leave a comment or message me on Instagram at KittiePillar. I'm happy to help everyone as much as I can. I want you all to be able to make the pudding doll of your dreams. Alright, let's get cracking. Before we get stuck into it, I just want to explain to you guys how a felting needle actually works. So I will show you on the magnifying glass, but it does have little barbs at the bottom that as you're pushing it through the felt, it catches the fibers and pulls them down into the felt. There are reverse barb needles and spiral barb needles. This one is in a triangle. Reverse barb works the opposite way, so when you pull it out, it pulls the fibers out. So I have used that method before on dogs' ears and things like that to make them fluffy with the existing felt. Turned out quite cute, but is really difficult for me to use. I don't actually know what their intended purpose is for, so I can't explain that to you now. But I'll show you the barbs on the magnifying glass a bit closer, and then I'll get into showing you guys how you can use it on your pudding doll. So you can see here the barbs on the needle, and that's what actually pulls the felt down, pulls all the fibers down, and it's extremely sharp. You do not want to get this in your finger, trust me, or anywhere for that matter. Ouch. So yeah, that's how the needle is, and you can kind of see how it's a triangle. But yeah, I'll show you guys now how to use it. So with this one, I'm going to show you guys how to do like a bit of a fade when you're wanting to do a two-tone body part, like this leg here or these hands. It's got like a bit of a fade out instead of a really distinct line. I'm going to show you guys how to do that with your needle felting block. So first of all, I've got my leg fully cut out on my back piece, and my foot piece I just roughly cut across, but I did make sure that it's fully the same size. I'm just going to trim it up a little tiny bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our foot piece, and I use a really big strong needle for this. Do not use your felting needle, you probably will break it. So what I do, it's going to be really hard for me to film this and watch what I'm doing, is I just get the very end of the fibres with the needle and I pull them out. Oh, some of them are a bit stiff. So you don't want to go too far down, you don't want to stretch your felt, you want to hold it very, very firmly and just pull the very ends of the fibres up. It's created this little frayed bit, and I'll continue to do the rest of that, and then I'll show you how to put it on. So we've got our leg piece and our foot, and what I'm going to do is just put a tiny bit of glue and just make it really, really thin and sparing. Not all the way to the edges, because you're actually going to have to trim the bottom of the leg piece off. So not all the way to the edges where you're going to sew, and not all the way to the edge where the frayed bit is. Just kind of fit it in the middle. And if you're doing this on the hands, you want to make sure you do it really, really thinly, really sparingly, so it's just kind of holding it on there decently but not slapping it on, because it will make sewing the paw pads on very difficult. So I want to give that a good squish in, and then when it's nice and dry, we'll needle felt it down. So you've got to make sure it's perfectly lined up with your bottom foot. It's not overhanging at all, and then we're going to needle felt it. So we're going to needle felt this top edge, and we're just going to kind of fade it in from the bottom. If you don't have a felting block, a dish sponge actually works just fine. You just have to kind of lift it up and move it around every now and then so that your dish sponge doesn't get stuck in the back of it. But when I first started needle felting, that's what I used, because I didn't want to make any kind of investments when I was flat broke before I knew if I liked it or not. So just use a cheap old dish sponge. So we're going to fade this in, and you don't have to do too much work felting around this area. It's mostly just the edge that you want to do, because the glue is going to do the main work actually holding it together. Now you've got your foot needle felted. I should have also actually added not to go all the way to the edge. You can a little bit, but you don't have to fully like get in there because you're going to be stitching that part anyway. So we can pull it out, and you got your furry back. What we're going to do now is iron it. So this is what I use, an ironing board, just a little bit of calico, and I've got my mini iron here, and I just really smush down over that at the back there and the bottom of the foot where it's the two layers. Just really try and press it down. Flip them over. Do the same thing on the front, and I'm not ironing the rest of the leg too much. It's really just the foot to try and smush it down. And this is also going to help to cement the glue under there as well. Now we're just going to lightly trim around the edges. So flip it over, and you can kind of see where the brown starts there. Excuse my nails, they're a bit ratchet now. And we're just going to very slightly trim off the edge, and you fade it in from where the brown bit starts. This bit you can fully cut off a couple of mil. Same as around the toes. And then this bit, it's only very thin where it comes up to here, so I'm just going to be very careful to fade it back out. If you wanted to add a little bit more glue like on here, you can, but I'm pretty happy with where it is there. So that one's pretty much ready to sew. See this bit here where it's got a little jagged bit? Just straighten that up. There we go, we've got a nice little two-tone foot. So I'm going to do the dog's tail two-tone, and I've cut a little white bit for the end tip. Now this one, unlike with these little hands here where I've blended it in, it's frayed. We're just going to do a clean cut line. So I did cut it a little bit jagged so that when it's felted it doesn't give it a purely straight edge, it still looks natural. But we're going to do the same thing as we did with the hands and the feet, and we're going to glue it and then needle felt it on. So I'm going to glue the little tail end on here, and not going too close to the edge, keeping it nice and thin with the glue, and not going too close to the edge where we're going to felt either. So try and get it lined up. There you go. So we've got both of them done, glued on. Now it's time to needle felt this little bit here. So when we're doing a straight edge like this, I do focus most of my needle felting on the very edge, just to blend it in a little bit. And then we just come back from that and needle felt in the whole tail. It is very easy when you're doing a style like this to get carried away and really blend out the tail. You probably don't want to do that because then it's going to distort the pattern piece. That one will do. I'm going to move the sponge out of the way. Bring in our little ironing board. We're going to press the back first. Just flatten all those little furs down. I try and keep all the furs actually within the tail and not over the edge, so I'm not trimming them off, because that is what's holding it all together. Really flatten it down, flip it over. And then we're going to trim the edges off. Oh, I don't really need to do much trimming here. It's actually, I cut it just the tiniest fraction bigger. So just this little bit here. Then we've got our little tail tip all needle felted. We've got our Siamese cat here that we're going to do some markings on her face. And I've got a random piece of felt here that we're going to use to cut out and make the shape. So I'm just going to lay it where I want it to go, roughly. I'm going to pin it on so I can cut it out a bit better without it covering her eyes. I want it to come to about here. So I'm just going to use my little scissors to cut it out a bit closer to where I want it to be, but not the whole way. I'm going to do that after I start felting it. So we'll just get rid of some of these large excess pieces. About the same size on the other side. That might be a bit close. Get rid of these lines with my water-soluble pen. And I want to keep most of this one because I want to know where to line it up with at the top, but not where it's going to be covering. So I've got my water-soluble pen back, and I'm going to draw in where I want the new markings to be. I'm going to flip it upside down to try and get it roughly the same. Trying to draw directly on water, not advisable. Check the distance between these lines. So then I can needle felt my markings within there. So you can do it this way, or you can do it the other way, which is cutting it out very precisely and then placing it on and needle felting it. Because of the eyes and everything, I'm just doing it a bit backwards. So you can kind of see the line there. I'm going to cut it out closer to what that marking is. Same on the other side. Get closer to our eyes. And that's pretty close to the line there, but I don't want it to be a perfectly straight line. So I'm going to take my tiny scissors and I'm just going to cut little waves into it so that it gives a bit more of a natural look when it's felted out and the edges are blended. So now we've got our little markings all in place. You can still see that there's lines where the markings and the features are joining, like along here on our mouth. So this is where we're going to use our little torn up pieces of our felt fibres that we've pulled off our main sheet. We've got them here and we're just going to felt them over to cover up those little patches. And these are great to cover up any kind of mistakes when you're felting like that, like under the chin here where this side's a bit smaller than this side. We're going to add a little bit more around here as well, and in this gap in the eyes just here we're going to add our little fibers in there to cover it up. I'm just going in and lightly felting over the top of it. This is where your little iron will come in handy as well, and you can just give it a rub because that will help to felt it in. This is a bit of a long process doing this, but pays off in the end. You can also use wool rovings if you have some that will match. Even if you wanted to use it to do all of your markings and your ear fluffs and that, it's a great way to do that. It's got a bit of a dip there. Just pop more in. But I also want to kind of round this bit off here because I cut it dead straight and then I realised I don't really like that. So I'm just going to pop a bit in the corner as well to try and round it off. With these edges, I'm going to use my water, my paintbrush, just to get rid of all of the blue water soluble pen now. Or water erasable pen, sorry I should say. I'm going to get rid of all of this as well. And the side bits. And I'm going to finish blending out the edges of the felt along here where it's still quite stiff, and finish up adding the fibers off camera. And then I'll come back when the cat's face is pretty much done, and in another video I'll show you guys how to add whiskers and eyelashes, which this doll is going to have both. So we've got our markings all finished up on the cat now. We've got all of our seams blended. We've got all the markings blended out on the sides and got all the gaps evened out that we wanted to fix, and she's looking pretty cute. So now I'm going to show you how to do it like the inverse way on the dog, where we're going to cut the markings out exactly how we want them and then place them on. With the markings on the dog's head, I'm going to do it the opposite to the cat. So I'm actually going to measure where I want it to be, how long I want it to be. So I'm going to go with about 7 centimeters to wrap around onto the back of his head. Yeah, 7 or 8 centimeters long and about 2 centimeters wide. So I've got my felt and I'm just going to cut it out roughly. So just like I did with the cat, I'm just doing like a bit of a wave pattern so it can be felted down into a more natural shape. Back of his head I'm not too fussed on. And I'm not going to worry about removing the water soluble pen there because it's white as well. So we're just going to be lining it up in between his eyes and making sure it's lined up with his nose in the center. Lining it up with the mark on his head. Lining it up in between his ears and then down the back. And then we just needle felt this one on. Blend out the edges, and I'm gonna give him a little bit on his nose as well, and maybe some eyebrows. I'm not sure. I might just do one tone that's a little bit lighter than his fur, and I'm thinking I might do a tiny bit of detail on his face as well. But we'll just needle felt this on and we'll come back and I'll show you those ones very soon. So I've got the dog's head needle felted in, and I'm going to use my mini iron to flatten it out a bit because some of the edges are a bit, I don't know, they're just not how I want it. Just go straight in there, flatten it out. Ironing it also helps to get rid of some of the like little holes that the felting needle leaves. Alright, so I'll do a little bit on his nose. And then he definitely needs something done with his eyebrows because he's looking a bit weird. He just looks like he's got gloves and weird stripes, so he needs some kind of eyebrows or something.
I gotta stop. Let's just pretend we did it. It was fun at the beginning. Now I don't feel so good. Maybe I'll just try and sell the house. It's fine. Don't save it to the portfolio. Oh, look, I was just trying to have some fun.
Okay, I got him some brows that match his eyes, and I think it looks a little bit better. Maybe it's the color of his tongue that's throwing me off, and because he's so dark. I'm gonna do a little bit of detail on his nose and his mouth, his, well, muzzle I guess you'd call it. With the spots on my puppy's face I decided to go with black, and I'm just going to show you how I do that quickly. We get nice and close. So I've got my pin marked where I'm going to put it. I've just got a tiny piece of the felt fibre that I've pulled off of the sheet, and I'm just going to push it straight into the hole that the pin left and just trying to get it all into that exact same spot. There we go. Eventually it will just all slot in. But there, he's looking kind of cute. I don't know whether to go with the white eyebrows or the brown. I might put a poll up on Instagram, and I had to put a shirt on him because he was just looking like he's got gloves on, so I don't know if that kind of helps my brain a little bit, but he's not exactly turning out how I thought he would. He might need a little bit of extra work, but the main point of this is to just show you guys the felting techniques that I use. And now I'm going to show you how to make fluffy cheeks and fluffy little ears on the cat. So with my cat here, I've got my cheek fluffs cut out. You can make your own if you like, or you can use a pattern provided. I've got this like bigger one for super fluff, or we've got these little smaller ones. Just depends on what you like. If you've still got your markings on your face, then you can use those to line up as well. And these ones I'm going to sew on. And then now I'm going to go from how close it is to the ear. So I'm just going to use a single thread to sew these on, and then I'm going to needle felt fluff in front of them, and we'll do some needle felting fluff on the ears as well. So I've got my wool rovings here. These are from Unicorn Fibres, which is an Australian business, and they sell felting products and wool and all things like that. They're absolutely amazing products, and I'm gonna take some, it's kind of hard to get the right length. I do always trim these later, but I do want to start out with a short one. Just get a little bit, pop it on the cheek, and then felt it in. And it's literally as easy as that. I just blend it into the color that's there. Sometimes I do a couple of pokes to stick it to the fluff, and I'll just trim that off. Literally get that bit we just trimmed and felt it back on there. So I just do this until I've got the cheeks as fluffy as I want them. So if it starts building up a bit like it is here, and it's getting a bit of a line where the wool ends, I've been using my sheet fibres to blend it over. And then just ironing over the top of it, and it will help to just blend it in a little bit. It doesn't look like it's helping yet, but trust me, it does. It's blended all that bit in there a bit nicer. And then with our cheek fluffs, we're just going to give them a bit of a trim, and I'm not going to go in and cut on the line like that. I actually am going to cut it the way that the fur is going. So it does take a bit longer, but it gives a more natural appearance. Just do little snips. Being mindful of where my cheek is at the back, because I don't want to chop that. There you go, and you got yourself a cheek fluff. So we're going to use the same method for the ear fluffs, and we're going to go in at the top, just laying it into the base. And I just give it a couple of pokes up the length of the ear so that it goes in the right direction. And just make it a bit thinner. There we go, that's a good consistency I think for her. I don't want too long. I actually don't really want them much longer than her ears, so I'll trim that down. Next up, I'm going to show you how to do spots and stripes. So it's great for tigers and leopards and things like that. You could use this method any old how. It's just mostly for the body that you're going to do before you've got the body sewn up. So the face you always do afterwards, because otherwise your face isn't going to be able to stretch when you make it, but the body markings, we do them beforehand. Doing spots and stripes and different markings on the body, I like to use cut out pieces of felt. You can use wool rovings if you like, but I'm just going to start by felting it. So that's my main little dot, and then I'm going to put my black pieces that I've cut out for around it. And you can blend them in as much as you want. Just to show you guys, I'm only going to do it a little bit. So when you're happy with how it's felted in, you just peel it off of the block. And I've got my little ironing board, and I usually iron the back first so that I can get the fibres in the direction that I want, so they're not overhanging any edges. I just give them a press first, and then I press the front lightly. It is a long process if you're doing something like this leopard I'm doing here, or a tiger or something, and you're doing like the entire body. It is a very long process, but trust me, they turn out super cute. And that is how you do details on the body. How did you go with the felting tutorial? What are you gonna make? Make sure you tag me on Instagram so I can keep up with the pudding dolls that you're creating. I'm so excited to see them all. Make sure you leave a comment if you need any help, or if you just want to leave us some nice little messages, that'd be awesome. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!